We acknowledge that we are on Treaty 6 territory to the north of the Red Deer River and Treaty 7 territory to the south of the Red Deer River. We acknowledge and give thanks to all the many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit whose footsteps have marked these lands for centuries.
We're at Fort Normandeau, on the banks of the Red Deer River. Just across from here was the Red Deer Industrial School, a residential school for First Nations and Métis students. From 1893 to 1919, 325 children, some as young as 5, were sent here from across Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba, separated from their families, in many cases by hundreds of kilometers. Students went to school, but also grew their food, made their own clothes, and maintained the school. Conditions were difficult, and the school had a very high mortality rate. Terry Lakey, a teacher in First Nations, Métis, and Inuit Learning Services, remembers the stories his mother shared being a residential school survivor.
They've had such an impact on a vast majority of Canada's First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people, and it's there, it's a legacy. And many of the students that I deal with and the teachers in the school district deal with, either deal with, family members who have gone through it. Every one of my aunts and uncles were taken away to a residential school somewhat like this, and it was a tough time. It was a dark time in my family's past. It was a hard time. But being able to tell my mother's story has been important to me. Out of that experience, I think my mother was teaching us as kids, was the fact that we need to be a resilient individual, and we need to be somebody who can forgive, because it was a tough time for her. I think being resilient and having that attitude of being able to forgive those that did those things to her made her the person that she became, and that was somebody who I really looked up to.
Foundational knowledge is knowing about the shared histories over the last 500 years in Canada. It's about understanding the Indigenous perspective, and it's moving forward from that. So hopefully by the teacher having the foundational knowledge, they'll feel competent, they'll have the capacity, and they'll feel comfortable when they're looking at inviting elders into the classroom, inviting other knowledge keepers or community members into the classroom. They'll feel more comfortable and competent in infusing First Nations context or Métis or Inuit context into their lesson plans.
Well, this is where I grew up here in West Park, and actually I was told that this was actually known as Indian Village. So I grew up here, and yeah, it was much different in those days. There were not a lot of Aboriginal people in Red Deer. We always felt kind of a little bit of outsiders, a little bit different than everybody else, and I started to search out additional information about my family and about the culture. And so I've really been on a journey, taking me a long ways for the last 10 years. Well, I think it's already evident right now in Red Deer Public. Our teachers I see throughout the district being very open-minded and accepting and willing to listen and learn. And so I think just having the willingness to listen and to hear their story is a big step, and students appreciate that.
We as a school here, we really take a big team approach to working with and supporting our Aboriginal students. It started out with trying to build up trust between our school and the families of the students that attend it. Doing what I can to connect with the Indigenous community here in Red Deer and bring elders and other cultural teachers in as often as I can. When we started our Aboriginal Studies options at the school, we designed those options with the help of the Indigenous community and with the parents of the students who attended our schools. We had a talking circle, and they told us what they thought was important, what they wanted kids to be learning about. I think we've made lots of progress.
2 years ago, we looked at our education plan, First Nations, Métis and Inuit section, decided that we needed to build our capacity in that area. So we We started a medicine garden here at the school, and we planted sage and tobacco and sweetgrass. And we had one of the local elders come in and worked with our students, did a smudging, a prayer, and helped the students plant all of the products. And we got the seeds and the sweetgrass from Eastview, and it worked out really well for us. And so what we've learned from the elders and from our First Nation, Métis and Inuit people at Central Office is that as long as you are taking a step, you are going in the right direction. Using the knowledge you have in the best way you can, and not be afraid of making the occasional mistake. Both of the elders we've worked with have been really receptive to working with the students, and very gracious in coming in and teaching our students and our staff. It's been a very good learning experience for everybody.
We can always assume, right, and read a book and just put our own interpretation on things, but if you're not out there and being present, I think you kind of lose a lot. I think a really important thing is consultation. You need to approach your elder in your community and show them what you're doing and talk to them about it and offer tobacco to them. Make that connection, make a friend, you know, be a friendly face to them.
Also, knowledge is passed on by elders. You know, it's been passed on by people over long periods of time, And a lot of our education was oral, and it still is today, you know, and through our songs, through our traditions of spirituality. To be able to learn, they have to go into the community. They have to be able to go to the Aboriginal agencies and learn about what those voices speak to, because the knowledge was meant to be passed down. You know, if the knowledge is meant for good purpose, it's meant for good purpose to create healing, create understanding. You know, we want it to be shared. We want it to be passed down.
I think those teachings come out in a lot of these activities that we do, and a lot of the places where you can touch on First Nations, Métis or Inuit culture in the program of studies. Like a lot of those ideas will come out of that, about the resiliency and the ability to make it through those rough patches in history where they had to walk, and then looking at contemporary 21st century First Nations, Métis and Inuit people and what they're doing and what they're accomplishing with their lives and the goals that they have. I think every teacher in in their classroom has dealt with a subject or a topic that has posed, put some stresses on comfort level, whether it's a certain math concept or a certain science concept. I think it's absolutely true. We all have those different challenges and things that we want to work through and become more comfortable with. Certainly as you know and understand a topic, the comfort level grows. As you teach it over the years, that grows. I think of a topic in my teaching career. I was teaching a novel that taught about the Holocaust. That's a dark time in human history, and so I had to become knowledgeable in it. I had to present it in a fair and an impactful way, and I had to be accurate. And so it's much the same as this, where you want to take it, you want to understand it, research it as best you can, and make connections to us here at the office, here at Fnmi Learning Services, and find that comfort level. And pretty sure over the years, as you teach something, as you become more familiar, your comfort level will grow and your repertoire will grow. For us here at Fnmi Learning Services, our job here is to provide teachers with those links if we have them made, and if they have an idea, would really appreciate them coming and chatting with us and find those connections.
I think we've done some really good work in our district with just building background knowledge, right? I think of my own journey over the last 5 years and learning about the First Nations people and learning about some of the struggles they've gone through, but also some of their proud culture or traditions. And I just think if we've done that as a district, we've really grown together and we have a better understanding, better cultural understanding, better cultural sensitivity than we had 5 years ago. I think the one message I've heard a couple times now is that there's not a wrong answer. I think sometimes we're worried about making mistakes or not being culturally appropriate, and I think the message I'm hearing from our local community is just try to do the right thing, and if your heart is in a good place, good things will happen for kids. I think the biggest difference for First Nation, Métis, and Inuit students is having champions in our building, right? Teachers, EAs, administrators that really just want to go the extra distance to help those kids out. And I think what we're hearing with all the different perspectives and voices around this issue is a desire to be involved. More than any other area, I think we have a willingness from our community to help us on this one. I think there's a lot of people that have a passion for these children and they really want to help out and they want their voice heard in our work.